So my first slide is actually for Mick and to say well done and congratulations. And I hope everyone can give a little finger clap or something for him. This sort of community engagement work is bloody hard, as we all know, and to be trying to do that nationally and to drop into towns and to activate local communities is a big call. But Australia needs this. So as you saw from the slides from our speakers before, there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and so really keen to help and support that here in Adelaide. And I'm going to touch on, I was going to touch on the leave no one behind, but I'm going to come back to that video that Mick just showed and that, choices. So my talk is actually very much about choices, and you'll see that theme as it comes through. Part of the challenge with SDGs, that way, let's get out of the light, thank you. Part of the challenge with the SDGs is that there's a lot to absorb. I was around in the time when they were the Millennium Development Goals, and they tidied them up to try to be 17 SDGs. The report that I've put some links in here for if these presentations are made available after. There's a lot of participation. Those links around the edge there are some of the Australian organisations that are involved. There is a really good dedicated group of people from Australia. But as you'll see, we're ranked 38th out of 163 countries, and we're pretty behind. So Australia actually needs to step into its global engagement and embrace more of the activities of UN. Mick gave me a couple of areas, the goals 9 and 17, and I stuck in an extra one because there's a bit of talk about climate action here, and at the moment, this week particularly, with a lot of discussions that have been had globally, a very important time. And again, as Global Entrepreneur Week, a really themed sort of interaction with this event today. So when I tried to look into those goals and look at the reporting and look at, this is an Australian report from the Australian team for the UN stats, it reinforced to me that this cold sort of data-based reporting needs community activity like this to get the stories out. And just to be able to resonate with those speakers that were on earlier, I had my little hair-raising moment there. I know that I'm in the right place, and this is, sort of feels like home for me. And so what I wanted to do was to draw a thread through my story, my origin story of what I've been through and how that relates back to the Sustainable Development Goals. And you won't be able to read that too well from the back there, but there was a young 24-year-old lad called John Coles who was on a boat called the Beagle that was captained by a dude called George Gray, who bumped into, he thought there might be an inland sea up there on the Gidja country up in Kimberley, and he was well wrong, and they stuffed up and got stabbed and because they didn't respect and understand reciprocity. And so lesson number one was just that resilience. He ended up in Mauritius, came back to Perth, went up to Shark Bay, walked back to Perth, nearly died a few thousand times, saved by Indigenous people at the time. Thought that was enough, jumped on a boat, ended up in Adelaide. The guy he was with became Governor Gray here, and a young lad by Edward John Eyre said, "Hey, let's walk back to Perth." And so they were doing all that little discovery work. So there's a little bit of adventurer DNA in me, and very much I wouldn't be here if that group weren't rescued and saved by the local Indigenous people. A whole other book on that one. My family here, parents, both twins, but Dad has been very much involved in South Australia's sort of origins with John Martin's chair of the Royal Adelaide Hospital and the library. I learnt all of my approach to, I guess, the soul of business from his approach with Johnny's and Johnny's role in the community here. Fortunate enough to be, sent to a good school, played a bit of footy, ended up at uni and got a gig in Adland. So really dream run. There I am, bit of a dick back then, I must admit. My apologies. Probably I'm going to put that down to a bit of undiagnosed ASD, so ADS, sorry. And so I was really fortunate with Leo Burnett to get access to international knowledge. And when I was in the US, I came across this thing called the internet. And so I came back to Adelaide and set up a digital marketing agency called Empire Ridge. And I ended up president of the National Marketing Institute and was lecturing on digital marketing back then through the universities. One of the first projects that I worked with was an IPO with some Indigenous owners back then, Ribna Green and another guy, Paul Archie. It employed some local Indigenous talent within our office and listed IPO, raised $5 million and put on an e-commerce platform. It's not around anymore. And that was a lesson for me in the gap between white fellas and black fellas. So again, perfect little world, wife, 3 kids living up in the hills. And then one day, I don't know, everyone here is familiar with that lovely Green Hill Road. You're pulling around the corner and you can see the first glimpses of the Adelaide skyline. And there was a moment there where I was looking down at Chambers Gully on the left and the road on the right, and a LTS 9000 Ford truck, I remember it, was coming along, and I made a choice whether to drive into it or off the road. And so for me, depression set in. And all of that world of privilege and confidence was just destroyed by what I didn't understand. And so for me, there was fortunately income protection insurance, but there wasn't the support and understanding around, and there's still challenges in the mental health support services. And so I went through my period of, blame, why me, how can this happen? This is the wonderful world that most people with their Instagram don't understand, of the dot-com bubble back in the 2000s. But it was just the first whack of a life that I've really had to learn what is the tools to keep going. And so for me in my work now, that's pretty much what I focus on, supporting entrepreneurs, giving the balance between driving to do something and also looking after themselves. So that path to wholeness involved quite a range of modalities, from sitting in the desert, starving for 4 days, doing vision quests, did 3 of them, Vipassana retreats, meditation, integral yoga, coaching, and also I started writing articles for a print version of the In Daily called Independent Weekly, and was writing about climate change back in 2006. And working with a couple of great people in the community here, Josie McLean, Gabrielle Kelly, driving some of the Al Gore programs for the climate crisis. And of course, got into a great thing called permaculture. And so permaculture for me is like a boot camp for the end of the world. Yeah, anyone here permaculture, Bod? Yeah. And so it is just, when shit hits the fan, you've got to work out how to look after yourself. And what they do, obviously there's a respect for shared humanity and our role in things, but they really had this approach of people over profits, which I guess my socialist, capitalist sort of tendencies embraced. But they also, David Holmgren turned this into a program which I really enjoyed. So the permaculture principles were there to teach people really some discipline around that. And in actual, at the time, this was before the Sustainable Development Goals. He had 12 and we had 17, so I think he was a bit more efficient. But being who I am, I looked at that and thought, oh, look, there's a gap here between sustainable living and sustainable business, and business has to change. And so I'd also done some coaching with a great man called Sir John Whitmore, who designed the GROW model, which is used in most coaching methodologies here in Adelaide, again brought here by Josie and Gabe. And so I went about turning this program into, if that's my own approach. So this was really trying to create a business model where I could take these tools and work on me as the first point of call for sustainability. And then what I called the we, the family or the community that I am a part of. And if I'm in a business or working on a project, that was the it. So how do I think about who I am amongst the people I'm with the work I'm doing, and try to turn that into a sustainable business practice? Whacked up the website, created the business cards. Well, fuck me. The GFC. So all the money in the world that was about to go to climate change all went to the banks. Who remembers that little moment in our life? And humanity's intellect at the time, and there's another thing called spiral dynamics, a whole other story, but we showed where our true colours were. And for the last, whatever that is now, 15 years, that's been the case. Until this year, I feel, post-COVID, we've sort of woken up. And so I was really challenged with this whole people over profits, because people proved that wasn't the case. And with those tools that I'd worked on, I actually had quite a stunning moment. That was quite a challenging time for me again, and still, you know, managing my own mental health through my own means. I went the sort of no drug route, and I actually had this moment where I said, "Why me?" And I heard myself, my higher self, tell me, "Well, it's your choice." So for me, my modality is that every part of my life here, going way back to my family, my parents, my place on the globe, my time, was my choice. And so I hold on to that now, and my approach is is either coming from a point of fear or ego, or love and compassion. And the reason I use the yin-yang symbol is that these are constantly in flux. I wouldn't be up here standing on the stage if I didn't have ego. I wouldn't be able to slow myself down and give myself love and be happy with being here. So everything that we're doing is a balance of these things, fear and love. So I had to go and get a job. So fortunately, I chose a job which was about helping the planet, and a great local company called Solar Shop. Some fantastic work done by a great friend here, Matthew Wright-Simon. We developed some fantastic work for this rebranding of this company. It became a national company, took on private equity, things were booming, 100 staff to 200 staff, and then they went into administration and left us all in the shit, didn't they, Matthew? So then this other company came along and said, "Oh, well, there's still a bit of bones on that thing. We might pick them up." And so Solco was this great company, listed company out of Perth that had a manufacturing business. They made solar pumps, solar hot water, wholesale distribution business, supplying PV and inverters around the country, and pumps, solar pumps, but also had an engineering business. So I got involved in all of these cool projects, things in like Papua New Guinea, putting in watering systems for communities that were stuck on diesel, all around not just Australia, regional Australia focus, but around the region. I got to go to visit factories where they were making these things, and saw from the change from Germany to Japan and Korea to what was going on in China. And so the last 18 months of that, I was doing what they call mergers and acquisitions in Corpy land. And so we were looking around the country at companies to merge with as a listed company. I was ended up being CEO of that company from being on my sucking my thumb under a table 5 years before. So for me, that was a really great moment, and I got a bit of a payout when we did a merger, so I chose to kick back and relax. No. I went and set up a company and an office in China. Why? Because I saw what was going on up there, and I was really enthusiastic and for the ability for that country to drive change. And they are. And so one of the first products I got involved with was selling a great Australian manufactured air purifier. And we got that into supermarkets all across China. And within 1 year, there were 100 competitors and advances in the technology, and kept telling the local guy that that's not working, and he didn't change. That opportunity, though, got me to introduce to Tsinghua University, one of the top universities in China. And they had this fantastic investment division that had a few hundred companies in it, but one of the companies was TUS Energy, which had all of these businesses that were involved in clean tech. And so I worked with them and Australian companies, taking companies into market and also bringing companies here. So TUStar is part of that model of nurturing and supporting entrepreneurs. So again, I thought I was doing pretty well, ticking off a few of the boxes, and then, God bless us, COVID happens. And so I'm looking at this again saying, well, there's a benefit in this, isn't there? There's got to be a benefit in this. There's got to be a learning. And so for me, really having confidence in that resilience. And we still did a lot of cool things with some companies through that period. I set up a great men's emotional learning workshop group, helping working with others to get through that. But I also wanted to make a difference. And so really in the last 12 months, I've done a lot of moving forward with action. So I'm also on the national board of the Australia-China Business Council, launched a Green Channel program, which is talking about the opportunities of greater collaboration between Australia and China. Change the narrative from what I know, from what I've seen of what they're doing there and all of their environmental remediation and their commitment to sustainable development goals with the UN. We launched this into Canberra. I've been briefing all the departments, and both in the federal government and state governments, and there really is a shift, as you saw this week, even the words that Albanese mentioned when he met Xi of collaboration on the climate challenge. I feel a real ripple hitting the shore with me being a pebble in the pond with this program. So then bringing TUStar into Australia, with that change in the relationship between Australia and China, these guys are saying, hey, Anthony, let's launch our Australian network and really plug you guys into what we're doing in Asia. And so this year, I've set up a fund in Singapore with a couple of venture partners up there to focus on how we can leverage this green economy agreement that's been signed and helping support Australian companies connect with this network. We involved the Chinese business community with this climate conference in Sydney last week, and finally started the conversation about, why not China instead of why China, talking about how we can move things forward here. A fantastic MOU signed with a big venture fund in Sydney to plug their programs and scale-ups for their climate tech ventures into our Asia region through the Singapore office of TUStar. Got to introduce this Ravenna Chen. She's the CEO of the region. She's my boss, actually. So a fantastic talent. Met with Dermot O'Gorman, the CEO of WWF, and we're working together on the COP31 program. There she is sitting, she just flew out on Saturday, and there she's in with the APEC Summit with the Young Leaders Program. The group of them run Indonesia, Singapore, Thailand, Malaysia office, and they are part of this Youth Collab program that are really driving the young people to commit to sustainable development goals and getting them to create entrepreneurial programs and get investment and grow. And so what I'm doing here and wanting to chat with Flinders and others is we want to plug our local talent into this program to be able to work with those research institutes, take out ideas, get some investment in, and land them in a place like Singapore where they can meet these other ecosystems and commercialise and grow. And a key focus for me personally is to work with the migrant community. These are the future wealth creators for Australia. They want to live here, they want to create a family and a future here, and they need better access to environments and ecosystems like this. And so TUStar and my focus with this is to actually try to be the confluence of those cultures but drive innovation and support global participation. Because we're sitting on top of this incredible green economy opportunity, which is all being driven through this regional comprehensive economic partnership to provide SDG outcomes. It's a huge focus of what's been talked about in Indonesia this week, and it's really a passion of mine. And so I'm here to launch these initiatives and to plug into not just here in Adelaide, but what we're doing nationally and overseas.